are one of the people that Uganda sent as a special envoy to Burundi for the peace process. And of course, you are one of the closest people to the late Pierre Nkurunziza. If you could just tell us, how did the two of you meet and how did your friendship form?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And it is so sad that he had to pass away this week in such a circumstances, but it's life. I met President Nkurunziza in 2004. At that time, the Arusha Agreement, under the mediation of both former Presidents Nyerere and Mandela, under Mandela to be specific, had been signed by politicians, but armed groups were outside. So as we were trying to get in the armed groups, so I was appointed to work with officials from Tanzania and South Africa to bring in CNDD-FDD, which was the main fighting group under President Nkurunziza. I met him in Dar es Salaam in 2004.
When you met him and the friendship that you formed, what kind of person was he?
Very reserved, quiet, very reflective. What let us going, what really, sort of set us off to be friends was, we are the same age. Me and him, we had this, he called me young man because he was older than me by 6 months. So he was born, we were born in the same year, 1966, but he was born in April, I was born in October. So his birthday has just passed, mine is coming in October. So on account of 6 months, he called me young man. So we talked about the history of Burundi, talked about his life. His father was killed when he was in his presence as a young boy. He was killed by government soldiers. And he grew up without the father.
In the last few months, when was the last time that the two of you talked? And what is it that you talked about?
I last talked to him on phone 2 months ago, but I last met him in person last year in March. I had gone to Burundi on a mission of the UN, peace building, and we had a long chat. I found him at his country home in Ngozi, and we really talked about many things. And what we talked about, the political crisis in Burundi that started in 2015 had been controlled, but the economy was bad. So I kept on him nudging him about the economy. And we really talked, and he said that maybe the economy is not my thing. My thing is security. I've established security. Then I will never forget this. And it came back really live as he escorted me as I was waiting for the car outside his house. He said, I asked him, Mr. President, when will we meet again? And he said, we will either meet again. I said, when and where? He said, when you decide, anytime you're welcome. But where? Maybe Bujumbura or heaven.
He lived sort of a double legacy. There's some Burundians who blame him squarely for the unsettling violence that Burundi fell in after he demanded for a third term. As someone that's known him at a personal level, what kind of legacy do you think he left behind?
Really, it's really very, very difficult to talk about the friend's legacy, but I will talk about him as a leader. Every leader will have the time of reckoning about legacy always comes. I think his legacy on the balance sheet is really, he will be remembered in Burundi as a hero. And I'm not saying that. Here is a young man that took on a system, an entrenched system in Burundi. And he ran an organization, a political military organization, CNDD-FDD, that went to the bush in 1993, led by career politicians. And he outmaneuvered career politicians that wanted to use these young men to fight the regime for their own, you're talking about leaders like Nyangoma and others that he toppled. The issue of the third term was really inbuilt in the agreement. The argument, there were two sides of the argument, whether he had actually served 2 terms, because 1 term he was not elected by the masses, he was elected by parliament. And the understanding at that time was that when the new constitution is in place, they will determine whether to have 2 terms or what. So he strongly felt with the majority of his followers that he had not served 2 full terms. And that led to violence. It was not nice. But that violence, really, he stopped it. As you know, now there is peace and security in the entire country in Burundi. And most importantly, he has conducted an election that has led to a peaceful transition. And you know the complication of transitions in Africa. To really pull that off, I think on the balance, he will always have critics. But I think Burundi is on a trajectory for sustainable democracy.
As a career diplomat, what does Burundi look like now, 10, 15 years, or even 5 years, or even 2 months down the road? What do you predict Burundi will look like?
I think Burundi, with this transition, the goodwill, you have seen how the whole world has congratulated the peaceful transition of power in Burundi. I think they can build on that, and I think the first priority will be to revamp the economy. And I also know the current president-elect, Evaristo, who is a friend of mine. They were a cohort of young men with President Nkurunziza that were working together in the CNDD-FDD. He really understands the need of revamping the economy and also